First contact catastrophe. The warning klaxon jarred Captain Natalia Volkov awake, its harsh wail cutting through the recycled air of her quarters. She was on her feet before her eyes fully opened, muscle memory from 20 years in Earth's combined space force moving her toward the communications panel. Captain to bridge, status report, she barked, already pulling on her uniform. Captain, came the voice of Lieutenant Diallo, long-range telemetry has detected an anomalous object beyond Neptune's orbit. It's not following any known trajectory and appears to be decelerating. Volkov's fingers paused on her collar insignia. In her 2 decades of service, humanity had launched thousands of probes and satellites, established mining operations throughout the asteroid belt, and planted research outposts as far as Titan. But nothing had ever come in from outside. Nothing. I'll be there in 3 minutes, she said. Alert command and prepare the ship for potential intercept operations. The corridors of the CSF Perseverance hummed with activity as Volkov made her way to the bridge. The vessel had been commissioned 20 years earlier during the Resource Wars, before the United Earth government had brought an uneasy peace to the planet. It was a relic, functional but outdated like most of Earth's defensive fleet. Budget cuts had prioritized exploration and colonization. Military readiness had seemed unnecessary in an empty cosmos. The bridge doors slid open, and 5 faces turned toward her expectantly. "Show me," Volkov ordered. Lieutenant Diallo, a tall man with focused eyes and cropped hair, gestured to the main display. The object first appeared here, approximately 6 astronomical units out from Neptune. Initially, we thought it might be a long-period comet, but its deceleration is controlled. It's using some form of propulsion we can't identify. Volkov studied the projection, dimensions. Approximately 120 meters along its axis, Captain, replied Ensign Ryoko Tanaka, the ship's sensor specialist. Her fingers moved rapidly across her console. But the readings are inconsistent. The object appears to be absorbing some of our scanning waves and reflecting others in patterns that don't make sense. Time to intercept if we burn at maximum, Volkov asked. 48 hours, 17 minutes, Navigator Hamid Ibrahim answered promptly. The youngest officer on the bridge, Ibrahim had graduated from the academy with top honors just 3 months earlier. This was supposed to be a routine patrol, his first assignment. Volkov tapped her communication badge, Captain Volkov to Fleet Command. After a moment's delay, light-speed communications were still bound by physics. Admiral Jackson Ortega's weathered face appeared on screen. "We're seeing it too, Natalia," he said without preamble. His eyes looked tired. He'd probably been awakened just as she had. "The Vigilance and Stalwart are being prepped for launch, but you're the closest asset." "Orders, sir." "Approach with caution, establish communication if possible, but your primary objective is intelligence gathering." Ortega's expression hardened. "If this is first contact, we need to know what we're dealing with." "Understood, Admiral," Volkov nodded. "We'll proceed at full burn." Once the transmission ended, she turned to her bridge crew. "Set course for intercept. Lieutenant Diallo, I want all weapons systems checked and operational. Ensign Tanaka, continue sensor sweeps at all frequencies. Let's see if we can get a clearer picture of our visitor." As the Perseverance's engines roared to life, propelling the ship toward the mysterious object, Volkov couldn't shake the unease settling in her gut. Humanity had searched for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for centuries, finding nothing but silence. That silence had shaped Earth's policies, encouraging expansion without concern for territorial boundaries beyond their solar system. What if the silence had just been the calm before the storm? Half a world away from Fleet Command, in the sprawling United Earth Government Advanced Technologies Complex outside New Lagos, Jamal Akafer wiped sweat from his brow as he stared at the stubborn power coupling. "You're being difficult on purpose," he muttered to the inert piece of machinery. The retrofitted component refused to integrate with the modern systems he was designing. It was frustrating work, taking military hardware designed 30 years ago and trying to make it compatible with current technology. "Talking to the equipment again?" Dr. Victor Novik asked, entering the laboratory with 2 steaming mugs. The Czech physicist set one beside Jamal's workstation. "It rarely answers in my experience." Jamal accepted the coffee gratefully. "This coupling is from a Mark IV railgun, perfectly good technology, just incompatible with everything developed in the last decade." "Why are you even bothering with such obsolete components?" Victor asked, peering at the schematics displayed on Jamal's screen. Because we have warehouses full of them, Jamal explained. The military budget has been shrinking for years. My assignment is to find cost-effective ways to update our defenses without building everything from scratch. Sounds like a bureaucratic nightmare, Victor replied. But at least it's theoretical. It's not like Earth needs a massive military presence. The resource wars are over and there's nothing out there but rocks and ice. A notification chimed on both their terminals simultaneously. Jamal tapped his screen to open the message, then read it twice, his mouth going dry. You were saying, he said quietly, turning the screen toward Victor. The physicist's eyes widened as he read the classified alert. An unidentified vessel of probable extraterrestrial origin had been detected in the outer solar system. All advanced technologies personnel were to report immediately to their emergency stations. My God, Victor whispered, after all this time. Jamal was already gathering his equipment. His project, retrofitting obsolete military technology, had just become the most urgent task on the planet. 44 hours into their journey, the crew of the Perseverance got their first visual on the object. That's no asteroid, Lieutenant Diallo said quietly, staring at the magnified image on the main display. The vessel, it was unmistakably a constructed vessel, had an elongated teardrop shape with what appeared to be articulated appendages folded along its sides. Its surface shimmered with an iridescence that made it difficult to focus on directly, seeming to shift between metallic and crystalline properties. Distance, Volkov asked. 300,000 kilometers and closing, Ibrahim reported. Our current trajectory will bring us within 10,000 kilometers in 90 minutes. Any response to our hails, Communications Officer Patel? Amara Patel shook her head. Nothing across any frequency, Captain. I've been broadcasting the standard first contact package as per protocol. Captain, Ensign Tanaka interrupted urgently. I'm detecting energy buildups along what appear to be lateral ports on the vessel. The signature matches nothing in our database, but the power levels are substantial. Volkov felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. Tactical assessment, Lieutenant Diallo. Without knowing their capabilities, it's difficult to say, he responded carefully. But I would interpret those energy signatures as weapon systems being brought online. Volkov didn't hesitate. Red alert, shields to maximum. Bring primary defensive systems online but do not target. I want to make it clear we're cautious, not hostile. The bridge lighting shifted to emergency red as the alert sounded throughout the ship. Volkov opened a channel to the entire crew. This is the captain. We are approaching what appears to be an extraterrestrial vessel. This is not a drill. All personnel to battle stations. First contact protocols are in effect. She had barely finished speaking when Tanaka cried out, "Energy spike." There. The first impact struck like a hammer blow, sending crew members sprawling as the Perseverance lurched violently. Warning indicators flashed across every console. Shields at 60%, Diallo reported. That was some kind of directed energy weapon, unlike anything we've encountered. Evasive maneuvers, Volkov ordered. Communications broadcast on all frequencies that we are a peaceful vessel. Navigator, plot us a withdrawal course but keep us at a distance where we can still observe. A second blast struck before Ibrahim could implement the evasive pattern, this one shearing through the weakened shields and tearing into the ship's port section. Hull breach, decks 3 through 5, Ensign Tanaka shouted over the scream of multiple alarms. Emergency bulkheads engaged. Return fire, Volkov commanded. Target their weapon emplacements only. The Perseverance's aging rail guns spun up, launching a salvo of magnetically accelerated projectiles toward the alien vessel. On the tactical display, Volkov watched as most of the projectiles were destroyed mid-flight by point defense systems they couldn't even see. The few that reached the craft's surface seemed to simply disintegrate against some kind of energy field. Captain, the Vigilance and Stalwart have arrived in system, Patel reported. They're still 20 minutes out but closing fast. Before Volkov could acknowledge, 3 smaller craft detached from the alien vessel, accelerating toward them at impossible speeds. Fighter craft incoming, Diallo warned. Our point defense systems are tracking, but they're moving too fast for accurate targeting. Volkov made a split-second decision. All power to engines, get us out of here, maximum burn toward the incoming fleet vessels. We need to warn them what they're facing. As the Perseverance's engines pushed to their limits, The alien fighters unleashed a barrage that overwhelmed what remained of their shields. Explosions rippled through the ship. On the rear sensors, Volkov watched in horror as more vessels emerged from what appeared to be some kind of spatial distortion beyond Neptune. "Send everything we've recorded to Fleet Command," she ordered Patel. "Encrypt and compress priority transmission. They need to see what we're dealing with." The ship shuddered as another hit connected. Emergency lighting flickered. "Life support compromised on decks 2 and 6, Tanaka reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Reactor containment holding, but we've lost 30% output." Volkov knew the Perseverance wouldn't survive much longer under this assault. But they had a duty to bring back what intelligence they could to give Earth a fighting chance. "Ibrahim, plot an escape trajectory using Jupiter's gravity well," she ordered. "Diallo, deploy all remaining countermeasures on my mark." As the battered ship limped away from the engagement, Volkov watched the incoming signals with growing dread. The Vigilance and Stalwart had intercepted the alien fighters, but the battle was horrifically one-sided. Within minutes, the Stalwart signal went dark. "The silence of space is broken," Volkov murmured, and we were not ready to hear what it had to say. She straightened in her captain's chair, eyes fixed on the path ahead. "All hands prepare for emergency acceleration. We're going home and Earth needs to prepare for war." Salvage operation. 6 months after the devastating first contact, the command center beneath the Carpathian Mountains buzzed with grim activity. Screens displayed the steadily advancing alien fleet, now identified as vessels belonging to the Viridian Collective, as they methodically established outposts throughout the outer solar system. Commander Wei Zhen stood before the assembled salvage team, his weathered face illuminated by the holographic projection of their target. The Archangel orbital platform, abandoned decades ago during budget cuts but still housing valuable military hardware. "Our intelligence suggests we have approximately 72 hours before Viridian scouts reach the asteroid belt," Wei explained, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had spent 30 years in Earth's space forces. "By then, we need to have recovered as many decommissioned vessels and weapons platforms as possible." The 20 men and women before him represented Earth's best hope. Engineers, pilots, and soldiers tasked with bringing obsolete technology back online to bolster humanity's meager defenses. "Questions?" Wei asked, scanning the faces of his team. A hand rose from the back. "Sir, the Archangel hasn't had maintenance in 15 years. What makes you think any of its systems are still operational?" Wei recognized Morgan Duchamp, a propulsion specialist with a reputation for bluntness. "That's exactly why we're sending you, Specialist Duchamp. Your expertise with older drive systems will be essential. As for what's operational, we'll know when we get there." Another voice spoke up. "Commander, what about the other abandoned platforms? Shouldn't we be targeting those simultaneously?" "Captain Volkov is leading parallel missions to the Perseus and Odysseus stations," Wei answered. "Our resources are stretched thin, Lieutenant Parker. We take what we can get where we can get it." The mention of Captain Volkov sent a ripple through the room. After limping back to Earth with the remains of her crew, Natalia Volkov had become something of a legend, the only commanding officer to face the Viridian ships and survive. Her tactical data had given Earth precious time to prepare, though whether it would be enough remained to be seen. Wei shut down the holographic display. "We depart at 600. The CSF Resilient may not be the newest ship in the fleet, but she's sturdy and her systems have been updated with what we've learned about Viridian scanning capabilities. Get some rest. Tomorrow we bring home some very old guns." As the team dispersed, Wei felt a presence at his shoulder, Dr. Octavia Rhodes, the mission's technology specialist and the foremost expert on adapting obsolete systems. "You didn't tell them about the experimental weapons cache on Archangel," she said quietly. Wei's expression didn't change. "Need to know basis, Doctor. If those prototypes are still intact, they could give us an edge. If not," he shrugged, "no sense raising false hopes." "And if the Viridians have already found Archangel," Octavia pressed. "Then this becomes a very different mission," Wei replied grimly. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." The CSF Resilient emerged from its final jump point at the edge of the asteroid belt, engines powering down to minimal output. The vessel, a mid-size frigate commissioned just before the budget cuts, had been retrofitted with experimental stealth technology designed by Jamal Okafor's team. Wei stood on the bridge, watching as Lieutenant Farah Nazari guided them through the debris field toward their target. Archangel's last known position was nestled within a dense cluster of asteroids, a strategic location that had once served as a watchpoint for Earth's outer defense network. Passive scans only, Wei ordered. If there are Viridian scouts in the area, I don't want to announce our presence. Sir, Communications Officer Ranjit Singh called out, I'm picking up automated distress beacons from within the belt. Multiple signatures. It looks like pieces of the mining fleet that was stationed out here. Wei frowned. The civilian mining operations in the belt had been ordered to evacuate months ago when the scale of the Viridian threat became clear. Any life signs? Negative, Commander. These beacons have been active for at least 3 months based on their power degradation. A grim silence settled over the bridge, another reminder of how unprepared they'd been. Stay on course, Lieutenant Nazari, Wei said finally. We'll investigate after our primary objective is secure if time allows. As they pushed deeper into the asteroid field, the ship's sensors began to pick up the distinctive metallic signature of the Archangel platform. The massive structure slowly came into view, a sprawling complex of interconnected modules and docking bays, its once gleaming hull now pitted and dulled by years of micrometeorite impacts. No signs of power, reported Tactical Officer Dmitry Voloshin. Life support appears to be offline. Environmental readings show vacuum conditions throughout. Wei nodded as expected. Prepare the boarding team. Full EVA gear, weapons hot. An hour later, Wei led the first boarding party through the airless corridors of Archangel. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness, illuminating floating debris and ice crystals that had formed in the extreme cold of the station's shutdown systems. Main reactor control should be 2 levels down, Octavia Rhodes said over the comm link, consulting her outdated schematics. If we can restore power, we can begin evaluating what's salvageable. They moved cautiously through the abandoned station, their magnetic boots the only sound in the silence, clicking softly against the metal flooring. The deeper they went, the more signs of the hasty evacuation became apparent, personal items left behind, tools still attached to half-completed maintenance tasks. It's like a ghost ship, Morgan Duchamp muttered, sweeping her light across a crew lounge where a decades-old game of chess remained frozen in time. Focus on the mission, Wei reminded them. Dr. Rhodes, how much farther to the reactor control? Just ahead through the next pressure door. The massive door to the reactor control room had been sealed during the evacuation, requiring them to manually override the locking mechanism. As it slowly ground open, Wei was the first to step through, and the first to see that they were not alone. The body floated near the main console, a desiccated husk in an unfamiliar EVA suit. It was humanoid in basic form, but with elongated limbs and a head featuring 4 distinct optical sensors arranged in a diamond pattern. Everyone hold position, Wei ordered sharply as his team reacted with shock. Dr. Rhodes forward. Octavia moved cautiously to examine the alien corpse. Definitely Viridian based on Captain Volkov's descriptions. Been dead for months, maybe longer. Looks like explosive decompression, see the tears in the suit. Wei processed this information rapidly. They beat us here. Question is, are they still here? As if in answer, a distant thud reverberated through the station's structure, followed by the distinctive sound of metal scraping against metal. Breach team, fall back to the junction, Wei commanded. Resilient, this is Commander Wei. Be advised we have confirmation of Viridian presence on Archangel. Possible hostile contact imminent. Copy that, Commander, came Lieutenant Nazari's tense reply. We're detecting unusual energy signatures approximately 500 meters from your position, moving in your direction. Wei made a split-second decision. Change of plans. Dr. Rhodes, can you get this reactor online without full access to control systems? Octavia studied the darkened panels. Possibly if the core hasn't been damaged, but it would be a cold start in vacuum conditions. We're talking hours, not minutes. You have 15 minutes, Wei told her. Specialists Duchamp and Torres stay with the doctor, the rest of you with me. We're going to create a diversion. Leaving 3 of their team to attempt the reactor restart, Wei led the others toward the source of the disturbance. They moved through the station's maintenance tunnels, using their knowledge of human architecture to outflank whatever was approaching. Energy weapons only, Wei ordered as they set up an ambush position. Avoid puncturing the hull at all costs. They didn't have to wait long. The aliens moved with an unsettling coordination that seemed almost choreographed, 3 Veridian soldiers in advanced EVA gear, carrying tools and scanning equipment rather than obvious weapons. They're not expecting resistance, Wei realized. Hold fire until my signal. He watched as the aliens methodically examined the station's systems, documenting and occasionally extracting components. They weren't here to secure the station, they were cataloging it, perhaps trying to understand human technology. Wei's communicator vibrated with an incoming transmission from Octavia. Commander, we've got a problem. The reactor's intact, but the Veridians have removed several critical control modules. I can initiate a partial restart using backup systems, but it will trigger alarms throughout the station. Wei considered their options. Without power, they couldn't access the weapon's cache, couldn't activate the station defenses, couldn't even pressurize sections to move more efficiently. Do it, he decided, will handle the welcoming committee. He gave the aliens one final look before pulling back to a more defensible position. As his team retreated, a strange high-pitched whine filled their comm channels, creating painful feedback. What is that? Lieutenant Parker gasped, adjusting his communication settings. Some kind of interference, Wei responded, wincing at the sound. Switch to backup frequencies. As they changed channels, Wei noticed something odd. The Veridian soldiers had stopped moving, their bodies twitching erratically as if experiencing seizures. Dr. Rhodes, Wei called over the new frequency. Are you picking up unusual radio frequency emissions from your position? Yes, she replied, excitement in her voice despite the situation. The reactor's old radiation shielding is degraded. It's leaking all kinds of electromagnetic noise across the spectrum as it powers up. Wei watched in fascination as the Veridians struggled to coordinate, their movements becoming increasingly erratic. And it's affecting them somehow. A realization hit him. Everyone full spectrum broadcast on all communication frequencies, maximum power. His team complied immediately and the effect on the aliens was dramatic. 2 collapsed entirely, while the third began removing its helmet in the vacuum of space, its movements desperate and uncontrolled. They're vulnerable to certain radio frequency emissions, Wei said with growing certainty. Document everything, this could be crucial intelligence. Before they could capitalize further on their discovery, the station lurched violently as partial power surged through its systems. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting eerie shadows through the corridors. Rhodes to Commander Wei, came Octavia's urgent voice. We've got minimal power, but it triggered automated defense protocols. The station thinks it's under attack. Can you override? Working on it, but there's another problem. We're detecting a Veridian vessel approaching fast. They must have picked up the power signature. Wei made another quick decision. Change of plan, everyone back to the weapons cache, we have minutes at most. They raced through the now dimly lit corridors, passing more signs of Veridian exploration. Opened panels, extracted components, sections that had been systematically cataloged and studied. The weapons storage vault stood as they had hoped, sealed and apparently untouched. The Veridians hadn't yet broken through its advanced security measures. Dr. Rhodes, we need access to weapons storage, Wei called over the comm. I can't override from here, she replied. You'll need manual authorization. Wei placed his palm on the scanner, relieved when it recognized his command credentials despite the years of disuse. The massive door slid open with a groan of protesting metal, revealing rows of experimental weapons platforms and ammunition stocks. Jackpot, breathed Lieutenant Parker. Those are XM-12 railgun prototypes. They never even made it to production. And for good reason, added weapons specialist Kimiko Tanaka. They were unstable, powerful, but prone to overload. Wei smiled grimly. Today, unstable works in our favor. Begin loading everything we can transport back to the Resilient, priority on the prototype weapons and any technical documentation. As his team worked frantically to secure their prize, the station rocked with a much larger impact. Veridian vessel has docked at the main airlock, Lieutenant Nazari reported from the Resilient. Multiple hostiles boarding. Commander, you have perhaps 5 minutes before they reach your position. Wei activated the station's internal sensors from a nearby console. At least 15 Veridian soldiers were spreading methodically through Archangel's corridors, moving with that same unsettling synchronization. Rhodes, Torres, Duchamp fall back to our position immediately, Way ordered. Lieutenant Nazari, bring the Resilient around to Docking Bay 4. We'll need a hot extraction. As his scattered team regrouped in the weapons vault, Way made a final, dangerous decision. Specialist Tanaka, how quickly can you rig these prototypes to overload? Kimiko's eyes widened behind her helmet visor. You want to destroy the station. I want to deny the Viridians access to what we can't take, Way corrected, and maybe give them something to remember us by. Understanding dawned on her face. 3 minutes to set the sequence. But sir, the radiation pulse from these weapons. We'll play havoc with their systems, Way finished. Exactly what we need, do it. As Kimiko worked to sabotage the experimental railguns, the rest of the team formed a defensive perimeter. The first Viridian soldiers appeared at the far end of the corridor just as Octavia's group rejoined them, breathless from their sprint through the station. Time to go, Way announced. Fall back to the docking bay in teams of 3. Cover fire only, remember what we learned about their sensitivity to certain frequencies.